Hi everyone. Sorry about that. The We selected the wrong option. We were setting up the live stream, so it just didn't work. I know some of you are waiting, and we do apologize for the confusion and the delay on that. Um, but I think hopefully this is coming through here now, and that we're live and ready to go at this point. So if this is your first time here, welcome. If you're a subscriber or someone who's seen us before, thank you for checking out this second live stream of ours. A little bit about the channel. It's just that it's my wife Amy and myself, Tanner, who are full-time crafters. We make metal and leather items together, and Amy also makes fine art as well. So today I had a couple different topics that I was going to cover in this live stream, and I thought it'd be just kind of a fun way to address them. And we're looking to do live streams going forward once a week on Wednesdays at 6:30 MDT. And I'll mention that again later for those who are checking in a little bit later. But we thought that this would be a good way to just have some discussion about some of the topics that we get asked about all the time. So last weekend, I did our first live stream, and it had a few hiccups there. I went to do it in the morning, and it started pouring rain, and we were at an outdoor show, so that wasn't really a great time to do a live stream or to set up, really. So I had to delay both. But fortunately, the weather turned around, and I was able to do it a little bit later on, but just not as originally planned. So that was just sort of an introduction to our live stream. For this week, I wanted to talk about that show and the show I did the next day. So I did two shows back to back. They're each a one-day show. That one was an outdoor art walk type show where we had our tent and we had a corner. So we had two sides facing out with fully displayed on either side. And we also had our daughter with us that day who was selling some of her artwork too. So that was kind of fun. And the next day, I had a very small booth configuration, just a 6x4 versus the 10x10 that I had the day before. And so I had a 6x4 indoor market the next morning. And one of the problems that can arise when you're doing two shows back to back is that, especially with an indoor and outdoor show, you need different things. And so I have, over the course of the summer here, been reorganizing my display items, my stands, my grid walls, my tables, etc. And I wanted to have it so that it's almost color coded. I think at this point I may color code them going forward, just because we've had a variety of different sizes and types of shows this year, with one being that our daughter has been coming to the shows and selling her work, so we have different things for her. Another being that we're doing more outdoor shows than we've done for the last few years, which is nice, but it requires totally different setup than it does for even the same size for an indoor show. And then also with Amy's fine art now being displayed at the booth, I had to rethink how I would display and fit even more items into the booth than I had previously, which was certainly challenging. If you've seen any of our previous booths, you'll know that Amy's quite prolific with what she likes to make. So there's all kinds of different types of items that we have on display. And you may be up against something similar too, or maybe you will be in the future if you're just starting off now. And so we want to give a little bit of advice on that and some of our thoughts about it. So as I was saying, I've been reorganizing my storage area for my booth supplies and booth materials, because in the case of last weekend, I did the outdoor show, came home at night, unloaded all the stuff, and then set out for the next morning all the things that I would need to take with me for a much smaller indoor show. And I did. I'll show you the outdoor show first here. I'll see if I can get that up to the camera and focus. So that's at least one side of the outdoor booth that we did. The other side was very similar, except for it had more table space on it. Anyways, as you can see, I had a lot of grid wall. I had 4 collapsible tables and a variety of other smaller displays, as well as my tent. But the next day, I was at a much smaller show, and I was indoors, so no need for the tent, but I definitely needed my lighting for this one to make sure that the products were illuminated how we like to have them. And then as well, I needed a 6-foot table instead of 4-foot, and less grid wall, but I still had a similar amount of items that I wanted to a similar variety of items that I wanted to display, although less of each. And so that was a challenge. And I thought maybe I could, hopefully, it would be helpful to others to talk about it here. Basically, what I did was I these are what I would recommend you would do if you're trying to figure out, is my booth going to work for this configuration at any stage, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, whatever show you're looking at. I would recommend get some graph paper or print some off and draw like a to scale booth, and then to scale tables and grid wall and everything. And you'll see very quickly, wait a minute, I can't fit through there. That's only 4 inches for the entrance to the booth or something like that. When we first started, I didn't necessarily plan things out quite to that fine a detail. I'd kind of eyeball it, and then sometimes, I'd have to uh, go in through the back of the booth, or reconfigure the table so there's actually an entrance and that sort of thing, which didn't lead to exactly the display that I wanted, or having the booth done as quickly as I would have liked. So that's one thing I definitely recommend. And then, you know, another thing that I would recommend would be to set up the booth as best you can in the space that you have. I've set them up in our living room, our basement, our yard, our garage, wherever, depended on where we're at and what was available at the time. But I always found it beneficial to do that, because then I could see exactly, especially with the 4x6 booth, like you don't need too much space. And you can quickly see, like, hey, if I use my tubs that I bring in my products in as risers, I can lift up my racks, which is what I did at that show. I have a big IKEA tub, and then I put a IKEA shelf on top of it, a bigger shelf, and I C-clamp my grid wall to it, and it gives height to the booth. And I really like that myself, because it makes it more visible and it makes a better display overall. It also allows you to use more of your grid wall, um, other than losing like 2.5 feet behind the booth because it's behind the table. Um, and so I definitely recommend both of those approaches when you're planning out your booth. They're very, very helpful. And thirdly, I would take a photo of the booth. Like the photo that I took of the booth here, this one again. I set the booth up and I went, yeah, I think that's how I want it. At least that's how it's going to be, because that's what I've brought with me. But I noticed that, I could have probably benefited from taller grid wall on this side. Our previous vehicle did not capacitate any bigger grid wall than that. So I don't have any. I don't have any that would fit in this vehicle. I had some when we used a van. I had bigger, taller ones, and then I had these short ones for the smaller vehicle. I could fit an extra foot going forward, but I haven't invested in any further grid wall at this time, although I can see where it would make the display better and the booth more visible and that sort of thing. And certainly something to think about for a show that was bigger than the one that I was at. Um, so those would be my 3 tips for doing booth planning, at least at that preliminary stage. No matter whether you have done 1 show or no shows or 50 shows or however many shows, I'd still recommend doing those things, especially if you've done shows before, but you weren't happy with your booth, or you weren't happy with a certain element of your booth. Maybe you couldn't put your finger on it. The picture will right away kind of show you, like, oh yeah, it needs to be higher. It needs to be a bigger opening to get in and out, or whatever the case might have been. I've had all those things happen where, like, my booth was too flat, for example, and there was no height to it. And I didn't think about it when I was in the booth so much at the time, but I took a photo of it, and then I looked at the photo and went, next time I'm not going to do that. Next time I'm going to make sure I bring some grid wall, or I'm going to bring some racking that gives some height, for example. And so I think those things would be valuable to you when you're planning out your booths. And certainly let us know if you have extra tips on that too, that you might want to impart to others, because I think that the vendor community always is sharing these types of things. I've learned a lot of the tips that I have in all the shows that I've done, and talking to hundreds of other vendors and seeing all the creative things that they've done, and them telling me, hey, this worked really well, but hey, don't do that because that falls over, or that doesn't work, or it's way too hard to make that type of thing. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the canopy on our tent. So the canopy, as you could see on that picture, this is even a better one here. Super dark, and it wasn't like really overcast. It was a little overcast, not Really sunny, not really cloudy, but you can see that it's very dark in there. Our previous tent, our first tent, was white, and it was really good for that. It was never dark. And eventually just got some holes in it, and we replaced it with the blue one. However, we replaced it with the blue one because we found the white one too bright in there. It was kind of blindingly bright. If it was like a really beautiful day at a farmer's market, that kind of thing, it was so bright and there was like being in a light box. And so that would, be a little bit much. And you don't want to wear your sunglasses at the booth, of course. So that wasn't the best scenario. On the other hand, the blue tent, while more noticeable, because you can say, hey, we're in the blue tent, which is usually there's only one or two blue tents and the person can easily find you. Um, but it's darker and it can cast a blue hue on your work. So that's not the best scenario either. So it is something to think about. I think going forward, I'm going to keep my eye out for maybe like a tan colored or a taupe colored one where it's not super bright, but it's also not casting dark shadows and blue lights on everything. And then, speaking of tents, maybe you're in a position where you don't have a tent and you're not sure whether you should invest in a tent yet, or you haven't really felt out to see if maybe you haven't done any shows, or maybe you've never done an outdoor show and you're not sure if you want to do that. There are some vendors who don't use a tent. They'll kind of gauge it by the weather and by the event. Some events allow it, some don't. But often art walks, such as the one we were at, there were vendors there that didn't have a tent and they just had their canvases set up and everything. Now I can imagine that might have been a problem earlier in the day when it was pouring rain. I suppose they may have just, since it happened so early, they might have just waited in their car for the rain to stop. I'm not sure. I didn't ask them that, but there have been many art walks that I've been to that have been really beautiful, just perfect weather, and there was a lot of vendors that just didn't bring a tent. When we first started, we had one of those big parasols that you get for your deck. I don't recommend those, and the reason is any wind at all, and they tend to fall over. We didn't have any accidents, no one got hurt, anything like that, but it was always like threatening to fall over. Like we put a lot of sandbags on it, so it was pretty secure, but we thought this isn't the best approach. That was just us sort of getting a gauge for whether we wanted to do this or not for outdoor markets. And we thought, yeah, I think we do, but let's buy a tent. And so we bought a used tent from a wedding rental business, and they work here in Edmonton where we live, and they use them for several seasons and then sell them off when they're done with them, kind of thing. And so it had a few little like dings and had to WD-40 it basically, and it was good to go. And it was a lot cheaper than a brand new tent. So at the time, that was really the best option for us. And it worked very well for several years. And when it got to the point where it was like, well, that one's, served us well, we bought a brand new tent, and I certainly don't regret that. We've had that one for probably about 10 years, maybe longer. And it's been a really great investment for us. So I know it can be a few $100s up front, but if you want to do outdoor festivals like music festivals or farmers markets, art walks, anything like that, I do recommend getting a tent when you've decided that that's the way that you want to go. So the second topic, so since our daughter has been selling with us and we have such a variable range of different displays now. There's different sizes of tables, there's different sizes of grids, and there's different sizes, all kinds of little displays as well, like tabletop easels and that kind of thing to display her paintings or Amy's or a journal or something else. I really am, as I mentioned, trying to compress that and get just the ones that I want, because when you go to a small show like the one I mentioned earlier, I highly recommend you don't bring a single extra thing. And if you think you have something extra, if you can discreetly like hide it in your car so that no one wants to break through the window to get your earring display or whatever it was, I would totally recommend like put in your trunk or something, because anything extra in those small shows will just get in your way immediately and cause you a lot of problems. I've done so many of these small like 6x4 booths, and I have found that even if I have like one extra shelf, I will take it out and I will not keep it in the show, because it's just not worth it to have it in your way, or any extra products, that kind of thing. But speaking to that, what I do now is that I try to organize the products and the displays and everything by where I think I'm going to need it. So for the outdoor market last Saturday, I had the tent and the sandbags and the 4-foot tables and all that together in the garage, and I could just grab it and put in the vehicle along with the products that I had selected, which was some range of everything, including our daughter's work. The next day, I had to bring, less products, but I didn't want to bring so much less that if someone said, "Hey, do you have this in a different size?" and I knew I had made it and I left it at home, that would be unfortunate. So I didn't want to do that, but at the same time, I did have to condense. And then what I really needed to do is to make sure that I didn't forget the lighting and I didn't forget any of the other like the pipes and that kind of thing that I would need and the bases for the pipes. Um, to make sure that I can make a compelling display for this totally different type of market. And so that is something that I think is just really important once you get going to organize it. And that will help too if maybe you have a partner, like a business partner or a life partner or a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad that's working with you. And they go, "Hey, I'm going to go to this farmer's market. Why don't you go to that art walk? And then we'll have two shows on the same weekend. We can be representing our artwork at both." That's awesome. We've done that before, but you got to make sure then that you're splitting because sometimes there's one indoors and one outdoor. And so that's okay. But sometimes they're both outdoors or sometimes they're both indoors. And then you got to say, well, okay, you can have half the lights and I'll have half the lights and that kind of thing. And so that can be something that, you really want to, I'm just getting some comments there. So that can be something that you really want to think about when you're planning out your booth. Topic 3. So I got a question through our email. It isn't about booth display, but I'm going to answer it anyways. This is from the initials were LB. So if you're out there, this one's for you, or at least I'm going to breach into it here. So basically, the question was they didn't have a lot of money to do shows. What's the easiest way to choose a show? So we're going to give you 5 quick tips today, and then on Wednesday at 6:30 Mountain Standard Time, 6:30 p.m. We'll come back and do a deeper dive into that topic. But just to get going here, I think we'll start with, so number 1 is look at your inventory. Do you have enough inventory to do the show, the size of show, the type of show that you want to do? When we first started, we ran into a lot of shows because my wife likes to make so many different types of items. They say, yeah, bring your home decor, but the jewelry category is full, or bring this, but not that, or bring all of these, or some other configuration, whatever it was. It seemed like every show had something different. And so we thought, well, we still wanted to participate and we tried to do that. And it was really difficult. But to this point, you're going to see if you have enough of the type of inventory that you are going to take to that show, should you do it. And you want to make sure that you have enough inventory where, like, selling everything at your table, of course, would be an amazing feeling. It is, but it's not always good if that means because you only brought 20 items or something and, you made like $300. That's good, but it may not be the best case scenario for you. You probably want to make, anywhere to 3 to 10 times your booth cost, depending on what you're looking for and where you're at and that kind of thing. But you want to have enough to do the next show at least. So you have to pay off this show and then get enough money to get your materials and then do your next one. And like, that's just a minimum. Otherwise, it's not going to really work very well for you. It'd be kind of stressful. So number 2, has the show garnered a lot of interest online or in person? Like when you're looking at their social media, does this seem like a show that a lot of people are waiting for? Often you'll see like, 1,700 people have checked going to this event. Well, that's a pretty good indication that there's a lot of people anticipating it. Maybe possibly not all of those people are going to show up, but the people that do come may bring others who hadn't selected, going, and they brought a carload of four family members or friends or whatever the case is, and it's going to be at least well attended and an interesting show and a way to minimally talk to people about what you do, and you see a nice variety of people there. How expensive is the show? So if you're just getting started, you probably want to look at a lower cost show just so that you can get like a feel for it. Like your first show doesn't have to be like a huge show. It could be, but I wouldn't recommend it. I recommend like starting with a smaller show, one that doesn't cost too much, one that has a lot of interest from people in the community, and something that where you think, my product, my artwork would be a great addition to this show. And I think that people that go to the show would really like what I'm making. Sometimes, you may make something niche and it maybe doesn't fit at the show, or the show may be niche and maybe you're like, well, I'm not sure. Maybe that is a show to think about, or maybe just go and attend it and see what you feel after being there in person for next time. Number four is the show marketing. So lots of times promoters say they're going to market and something happens. Something happens in their life and they're not able to. Or they market, but they use old school ways and they put up billboards and they run ads in the newspaper, whatever the case is. Eh, those don't work that well at this point. And so, are they marketing? Where are they marketing? Have you happened to see the ads? Did you see the ad and actually notice it? And did you find it appealing? That kind of thing. Like, would you shop at this show? So that's something to think about as well. Um, and then we have look at the location and space before you choose anything. If the location is like way out of the way for people, or it's like on the second floor, or I've even found I did a Christmas show a few years ago where it was a split level show. It was in a building that was in a central location, but you couldn't really drive to it easily. So okay, but that then meant that people had to park a ways away and come over, or they had to take public transit to get there. There were barriers to getting there. So that limited the flow of people coming in. And then our booth ended up being on the second floor. It was on the first floor, and there was a last minute rearrangement, and we ended up on the second floor. So I hiked all the stuff up there, which was really difficult. There was only stair access because the elevator was out of service. So I thought, well, I don't know. I had hundreds of pounds of stuff to carry up there, but it was a steep stairs. It was winter. The stairs were a little slippery. How appealing is that to people? It was not very appealing. Upstairs did not get nearly the amount of traffic as the lower level did. Not that they got that much, but at the same time, many of the people elected just to not go up because the staircase was unappealing, or there was a mobility concern, etc. It just didn't work well as a venue, even though initially it seemed like it might. It was sort of an interesting spot. So you have to keep that in mind. There's all kinds of venues that get used. Many of them don't make a lot of sense. In Edmonton, there's kind of limited venues where bigger shows are taking place. So then often the smaller shows all end up in kind of odd locations, and some of those work well and some of them don't. Looks like I have a question here. Do you run your own ads for shows? Sometimes we will run ads in conjunction with the shows. Like if they're offering like an advertisement kind of a promotion package to go with the show, I guess. They'll sometimes, some of the shows will say, hey, for extra $15, did you want to promote promotion through our Facebook ads? And the show will run the ad for you. And, don't forget to like and share it yourself and that kind of thing as well. So we will do that. Often that's how we would be advertising. We also do run ads on our Facebook. Like if we're going to be at a large craft show, we'll try to advertise to our customers saying, we're going to be at this show, and hopefully you can join us. And I know there's a lot of wonderful artists at this show that you might want to check out. And we think it'll be a lot of fun. And so we do a lot of like kind of family oriented shows, for example. So we love to kind of promote that because it's nice for the community to have these events. And even some of the big shows, people that are new to Edmonton or new to the area, they didn't know that the show was happening until they saw it on our page or another one of our friends' pages that's also a vendor. So that is very valuable. So even if your ad maybe brings in someone that ends up going to your friend's booth or your colleague's booth, their ad might bring in someone that comes to your booth. So it's definitely always a good idea to go ahead and do some advertising. Pick the one that you feel most comfortable with, but something like Facebook is a good way to go with that, I think. So I will see you. I think that's pretty much all for today. So I guess I will see you. If you have any questions in the meantime, please email Amy and I, and we'd love to hear from you and see what you thought. Sorry again for the technical difficulties. Um, I don't know. It's a bit of a learning curve, but it is exciting to try something new, I think. And so we'll be back here again on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. MDT. I think that's Mountain Daytime. And also, if you want me to do a live booth review on our channel, send me a photo and we can talk about what will get your products more attention, at least in the ways that I've found worked well for our booth. And anyways, check out our other craft videos in the meantime on our channel. If you enjoyed the live stream, which I hope you did, please consider liking and subscribing our channel. That really helps a lot. And we hope to see you here again on Wednesday. And take care. Thank you.